Short exercise 21-17, break-even point for a company with multiple products. So, Atlanta Swim Park sells individual and family tickets. With a ticket, each person receives a meal, 3 beverages, and unlimited use of the swimming pools. Atlanta Swim Park has the following ticket prices and variable costs for the year. So we can view our data here. So Atlanta Swim Park expects to sell 2 individual tickets for every 4 family tickets. Atlanta Swim Park's total fixed costs are $75,000. So here we have requirement 1, compute the weighted average contribution margin per ticket. Complete the table below to calculate the weighted average contribution margin. Round the weighted average contribution margin per unit to the nearest cent. So an individual ticket costs $30, and then the variable cost of that ticket is $15. So then the family ticket is $90, while the variable cost per that family ticket is $60. So if we review our requirements here that pop up as each problem goes, we compute the weighted average contribution margin per ticket, then calculate the total number of ticket sales Atlanta Swim Park must sell to break even, and that's kind of our main goal here, to see what that break even point is. And then calculate the number of individual tickets and the number of family tickets the company must sell to break even. And that break even analysis is basically just a target profit of 0. So normally we'd just use this formula: required sales in units equals fixed costs plus target profit divided by contribution margin per unit. But this time, since we have more than one product, the denominator instead of contribution margin per unit is going to be the weighted average contribution margin per unit. So how do we calculate the weighted average contribution margin for 2 products? We're going to have to calculate the contribution margin for the individual ticket, the contribution for the family ticket, and then multiply it by the ratio, and the ratio is right here. They expect to sell 1 individual ticket for every 4 family tickets. So what that means is that for every 6 tickets they sell 2 will be individual tickets and 4 will be family tickets. So this park is very popular with families. So requirement 1, again, we have to compute the weighted average contribution margin per ticket. So before we can do that, we have to calculate the contribution margin. So the unit contribution margin is sales revenue per unit minus the variable cost per unit. So we've got to get the individual ticket and then the family ticket. So first in this field, we're going to start by taking sales price per unit. And that's right here. And then we're going to go ahead and copy over the individual sales price per ticket here for 30, and then the family one for 90. So individual is 30, family is $90 per ticket. And then next we will subtract variable cost per unit, and that's also given to us here. So for the individual, again, that's $15. For family, it's $60. And that is going to equal our contribution margin per unit. So you can see the tiny little minus sign here. We're subtracting this variable cost per unit from the sales price per unit. So we have 30 minus 15, so that's going to give us $15 for the contribution margin per unit for individual. And then we take 90 less 60, and that is going to give us $30 for the contribution margin per unit for the family ticket. And then next we're going to multiply that by the sales mix in units. So what is the sales mix? They expect to sell 2 individual tickets for every 4 family tickets. So again, that is 2 individual, get our label in, sales mix in units, and then that's 2 individual to 4 family. Again, that's given to us here. And that is going to give us a total of 6 tickets. And on average, 2 of them are individual tickets and 4 are family tickets. So now for the contribution margin, we're going to take the contribution margin per unit for each side for individual and for family. We're going to multiply that by the sales mix in units for each one. So that's going to be 15 times 2 for the individual, so contribution margin of 30. And then we have 30 times 4 for the family tickets. So let's have a look. That's going to be 120. And then we can add those through here for a total contribution margin of $150. So in other words, when they sell 6 tickets, they generate about $150 of contribution margin, assuming that the ratio of 2 to 4 holds true. So now we need to scroll down a tiny bit. We have the weighted average contribution margin per unit we need to calculate here. So in order to calculate this, we take this total contribution margin here of 150, and we're going to divide that by the tickets, the number of tickets, the 6. So that's going to be 150 divided by 6, which gives us $25. So that's a weighted average contribution margin per unit of $25. So there's nothing below this right now, so we can go ahead and check our answer. Well done. Okay, now in requirement 2, we have to calculate the total number of tickets Atlanta must sell to break even. Select the formula and then calculate the amount. So again, break even is just a target profit analysis with a target profit of 0. So we're going to take the required sales in units is fixed cost plus target profit, but instead of a contribution margin per unit, it's weighted average contribution margin per unit since we have multiple products. So it's fixed plus target divided by weighted average. So let's go ahead and input that formula. So that is that fixed plus target profit divided by weighted average margin per unit. So fixed costs, let's start with fixed costs here. That is going to be that 75,000 given to us here at the beginning of the problem. So we'll add that into our calculator, 75,000 plus target profit. And again, what is our target profit at the break-even point? It is 0. So we can add 0 or skip that part here or omit it since 0 plus 75,000 is still 75,000. And then we'll go ahead and divide this by the weighted average margin per unit, which we just calculated handy dandy right here for $25. So let's go ahead and divide this by the $25. And that is going to give us 3,000 for the break-even point in units. So this 3,000 means we need to sell 3,000 tickets to get to that break-even point. And again, that's at this ratio that they gave us of 2 individual to 4 family. So let's go ahead and check our answer and move on to the last part. Okay, so we have requirement 3, calculate the number of individual tickets and the number of family tickets the company must sell to break even. So we're going to sell 3,000 tickets to break even. So now the question is, how many of those tickets must be individual and how many must be family tickets? So the way we do that is we're going to take the number of tickets to break even and multiply it by the proportion, the sales mix that they gave us above here. So this break even point in units for the individual tickets is going to be this 3,000 break even point in units tickets, the 3,000. And then we're going to multiply that by the proportion here of the 2 individual tickets to every 4 tickets, but that's going to be 2 out of 6 because again, that's out of the total tickets. So 2 plus 4 is 6, and it's 2 out of 6 that we're looking at here. So we can do that by multiplying by 2 and dividing by 6. And that gives us 1,000 for the break-even point in units for individual tickets. And then we're going to repeat that here, that process with the family tickets for the break-even point in units for family tickets. So let's clear our calculator. I'm going to take this break-even point in units of 3,000. And then we are going to take this by the proportion of family tickets. So again, that's 4 out of 6 tickets. Because between these two, it's a total of 6. So out of every 6 tickets, they expect to sell 4 family. So that's 4 out of 6. So let's go ahead and multiply this by 4 and divide by 6 to get that proportion. And that is going to give us 2,000. So let's re-input 1,000 there. Looks like that went missing. And then for the break-even point in units for the family ticket, that is 2,000. And the other way you could calculate this, you could just take the 1,000 out of the 3,000 for the family tickets, because again, the individual tickets have already been calculated. So that's just another way to either double check your answer or calculate it. But let's go ahead and check our answer then. Well done. And as a review, basically what this problem here means is that you tell your CEO we need to sell 3,000 tickets to break even, and of those 3,000 tickets, we need 1,000 to be individual and 2,000 to be family. And that's it.